Few episodes of Black Mirror have disturbed me as much as White Bear, and it's not necessarily because of the violence and gore involved in this episode, but rather what is being said about justice in this storyline. So on the surface, this episode appears to be about a woman who just wakes up with no memory of who she is, and the world around her seems to have collapsed into chaos. It seems like people are unreasonably chasing her through the streets while silent crowds film her suffering on their phones, and nobody is helping her, everybody's watching her. It's confusing, it's disturbing, and it seems on the surface like this is just a really messed up situation for the woman. For the majority of the episode, it's assumed that she is the victim, but then the twist comes. This woman, named Victoria Skillane, has helped abduct and murder a child, a little girl. And what we've been watching isn't just random chaos, but a carefully designed punishment. Every day, her memory is wiped, and every day she's forced to relive the same terror as spectators film and laugh and don't do anything to help. The episode ends with Victoria screaming in confusion as the audience applauds. And by the end of this episode, I found myself questioning, was this actually justice? Not necessarily questioning whether somebody deserves to be punished in this way after committing this kind of crime, but rather, is this punishing the criminal? At first I thought that this punishment did make sense. If Victoria remembered her crime, then she might grow numb to the suffering over time, she might adapt, she might emotionally process it. Her keeping her memory would make her understand that, yes, I do deserve this, and perhaps the punishment would feel less intense. So I understood the idea or the intention behind erasing her memory every single day. But then I thought, if her memory is resetting every day, she's experiencing pure terror every time. And every day she wakes up and her memory is reset, she believes she is innocent. Every day she experiences the shock and fear and helplessness that her victim must have felt. But she can't remember her victim. The punishment feels poetically just, because she's not just suffering, she's suffering as somebody who believes that she hasn't done anything wrong, and in my mind that makes the punishment complete. But there is a philosophical problem that emerges from this punishment, and that's the problem of identity. If her memory is wiped every day, is she still the same person who committed the crime? This question has deep roots in philosophy, particularly in the work of John Locke. Locke famously argued that personal identity is grounded in memory and in psychological continuity. What makes you the same person over time isn't just simply having the same body, but rather the continuity of your consciousness. You are the same person who did something in the past because you can remember doing it. So memory, in Locke's opinion, is what links the present self to the past self. If you remember committing an action, then that action belongs to you. But if you can't remember it, then the connection becomes philosophically unstable, which leads to the implication that moral responsibility depends on psychological continuity. If a person genuinely cannot remember committing an action, is the moral connection between the present self and the past self still there? So if identity follows memory, what happens in White Bear? Every morning, Victoria wakes up with no memory of her past actions, and the psychological thread that links her to the person who committed the crime has been severed. The Victoria we see running through the streets has no awareness of what she has done. So in Locke's terms, the consciousness that committed the crime no longer exists. Instead, a new consciousness appears every day and just occupies the same body, but is disconnected from the past. And this is where things become philosophically unsettling for me personally. Later philosophers took Locke's theory even further. For example, the philosopher Derek Parfit argued that personal identity might not be what ultimately matters, and instead what matters is psychological continuity and connectedness. Things like memory, intentions, character traits, and experiences link one's mental state to another over time. But in Victoria's case, this connection is missing. There's no psychological continuity between the woman who did what she did and the woman who wakes up terrified in the White Bear house. The intentions, the memories, and the moral awareness that defined her as a criminal self, are absent. She shares a body with the criminal, but not the psychological identity. So in a very real sense, she is somebody else. And if we accept that as true, then the punishment becomes deeply upsetting. Because who exactly is being punished? And this is the debate that I find myself having watching this episode. On the one side, there's the instinct for justice. Victoria did commit an unspeakable act, and the crime was deliberate and cruel, and she not only participated in it, but recorded it. And the idea that she deserves suffering feels unavoidable and almost obvious. If punishment does exist to balance moral scales, then perhaps extreme crimes like this one do demand extreme consequences. So maybe the endless loop of terror is proportional to the crime. But on the other side, if punishment is supposed to be meaningful, it must be experienced as punishment. A person must understand that they're suffering because they committed a wrong. Otherwise, their suffering is just suffering, not punishment. It has no moral message, it teaches nothing, it doesn't express justice. Instead, it's closer to ritualized cruelty. Every morning, the Victoria we see waking up is a person who has never committed a crime, and she experiences pure confusion, pure fear, pure helplessness, and she's being tortured without knowing why. And that raises the disturbing possibility that the people in the park aren't just punishing a criminal, they're torturing an innocent person, or at least a person who believes and understands themselves to be innocent, but just happens to share a body with a criminal. And this is where the episode becomes less about Victoria and more about the crowd, because the spectators know exactly what they're watching. They pay for tickets, they film her suffering, they laugh when she screams. The punishment has almost become entertainment. And this shifts the moral spotlight away from Victoria and onto society itself. The crowd believes they're participating in justice, but what they're truly participating in is closer to spectacle. Michel Foucault wrote about the history of punishment and how older societies often staged public executions as performances. Punishment wasn't just about justice, but about displaying power to the crowd. White Bear feels like a technological return to that earlier era that Foucault writes about, and justice has become theatre. Ultimately, what is the instrumental purpose of this punishment? It can't rehabilitate Victoria because she forgets everything every day. It can't deter her from future crimes because she can't even remember committing any. It might deter the public, but the park has turned punishment into entertainment rather than moral reflection. And it fails even as retribution if retribution requires the criminal to recognize their guilt. Punishment without awareness is morally empty and just produces suffering without meaning.